Hello, everybody. Welcome to our regular Thinking Thursday. And honestly, we are really fortunate to have a fantastic speaker with us, Dr. Pravina Rodrigues. She's an adjunct facility at the Star King School for the Ministry in California, USA. She's a acharya in the Shakta Bhakti Sampradaya called Shuddha Vidya Tattva. She is a postdoctoral fellow at the Jesuit School of Theology of Santa Clara University, 2021 and 2022, and an assistant editor for Springer's Journal of Dharma Studies. Dr. Pravina's recent book publication, A Shakta Method for Comparative Theology, Upside Down, Inside Out, Lexington Press, offers a Hindu perspective on comparative theology, theology of religions, and interreligious dialogue. All this may seem a little heavy for most of us, but I think the perspective on offering a Hindu perspective on comparative theology and theology of religion is something that we should understand because religion plays a very big role in our lives. So, Dr. Pravina, we are all ears for what you have to say, and welcome to our Thinking Thursday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. And I want to begin by thanking Teja Solanki, who actually introduced me to Dr. Tripti Jain and to Thinking Thursday. And she spoke very highly of the group. And I Googled you all, which all research scholars are used to doing. I found you on YouTube, and I found the channel extremely fantastic. I watched several videos, and I also now follow Dr. Jain on Facebook. I'm reading some of her very interesting posts. So I'm really honored to be here. And I also want to thank Shakuntala for all her help, with the flyer, with organizing and the emails and everything. I'm really grateful to be here. So I promise to make it not too technical. But what academia does is, it just has this way of, North American academia has this way of this technical jargon. So I'm going to try my best not to use that technical jargon and make it super simple for you all. I have a PowerPoint that I would like to share. And let me share my screen.
Everyone, please stay muted except the speaker. Dr. Pravina, if you can just unmute yourself, because I muted everybody. Thank you.
Unmute myself, and I will share my screen again. Give me a second. Okay, so welcome again. And today I'm going to be talking about the 3 principles of Shakta Tantra. And here's a brief outline of what I'm going to be presenting today. So first, I will talk to you about Tantra. Then I will talk to you about Shakta Tantra. And then half of the presentation will be on the 3 principles of Shakta Tantra. And the first principle is called dynamism. The second is the principle of contradictions. And finally, the third principle is about purity and power. And in the end, I will leave you with some application so that you can put this knowledge to use and you can sort of apply it in your day-to-day life. And you will be able to see throughout the presentation how Tantra can be applied to the mundane, to everything that you are doing, every day. Okay, so first, what is Tantra? And you will find the specific scholars that I have taken these material from in the bottom. They are in brackets. So I will not mention the scholars. But here's a definition of Tantra. And so So you know that tantric texts do not actually proclaim themselves as tantras. Like once in a while, they will say asmin tantre, which means in this tantra. But other than that, tantric texts will declare themselves as agamas or as samhitas or as sutras. And what agama basically means is a tradition that is being handed down. What samhita means is a collection of texts. And what sutra means is basically just concise, short form versions of texts. So tantric texts were classically or traditionally called agamas. They were called sutras and they were called samhitas. And this is important to know because tantra is a term that is then used from the outside. It's used by scholars in Western academia. And what tantra, the word tantra basically means is to extend, to spread, and to spin out, and to weave. So what is it that is being extended? What is it that is being woven? And what is it that is being spread out? Not your blanket, but it's basically the human body. And when we talk about the body, we mean the subtle body. So it is the subtle body that is being woven, as it were, into the cosmos. And the practitioner, someone who basically is dedicated to tantric practice, to tantric rituals, they are the ones who basically find themselves in a place where they are experiencing this interwovenness of the cosmos, of everything that exists in the cosmos, this interwovenness between themselves, between their thoughts, between the ecological world, the biological world, the sentient world, everything that you can see and touch and feel. So Tantra offers a system or a system of practices that allows you to basically expand your subtle body, to expand your consciousness so that you can now experience something more than yourself, something more than what is related to you, like your family, or, we generally feel for our family first. We tend to feel for our nation, our community, our loved ones, your pets, so on and so forth. But what Tantra does is it'll sort of expand your consciousness to such a level that you can now feel oneness, a sense of identity with the universe, with the cosmos, and sometimes even with specific sentient beings or animals, plants, so on and so forth. So Tantra or Tantric texts are basically, they mean a system that is being presented, a system that is being offered to people in order to realize or in order to basically experience what it means to be in union with the universe. And that's basically what Tantra means. So there are different kinds of Tantra, and there's Buddhist Tantra, there is Jain Tantra, and specifically in this presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about Hindu Tantra. And there are tantric practitioners all over the world, in India, China, Japan, East Asia, Mongolia, Tibet. You will find tantric practitioners. Hindu Tantra is different. It's unique. And even though we do not know much about the origins of Tantra, you will find that between the 8th and the 14th century, there are a whole bunch of tantric texts that come into existence. So it's not just a whimsical tradition where someone's just thinking something and practicing something. That's not how it is. It's a firmly grounded tradition, and you will find like 92 something texts within the Hindu world that have been sort of systematized. So Hindu Tantra specifically are dedicated to these specific deities. One is to Shiva, and they are called the Shaiva Tantric texts. And then you have the ones that are dedicated to the goddess. And then you will have another set of texts which are dedicated to Vishnu. So you have Shaiva Tantra, you have Shakta Tantra, and then you also have Vaishnava Tantra. And in each of these texts, these deities are central, except in the Shaiva text, you will also find that It is not, in some of the Shaiva texts, you will find that it is the goddess who is the supreme, or this primary, this this primary being from whom the universe now comes into existence. So Hindu Tantra is unique in the sense that, or what is revealed in Hindu Tantra is basically that the universe comes into existence from a specific deity, and the tantric texts are the revelation of this deity. So in that sense, it's also different from the Vedas, and you will not find some of these deities, like Kali, in the Vedas. So they are specifically tantric deities that are there, Tara, so on and so forth, right? Now, there's a scholar called Feuerstein, and he sort of explains and makes a difference between, articulates the difference between Tantra and Tantra philosophy and some of the other philosophies that existed back in the days, right? So he says there is the verticalist kind of a way that existed in the Hindu realm, and then there is the horizontalist kind of way that exists. But Tantra is the integrative. It's a system that basically integrates. So the verticalist system basically is where the practitioner will leave their family, leave their household, leave certain lifestyles, and just go into isolation, go to the Himalayas, or follow a specific set of practice where they are trying to get away from certain things and then follow an inward path. So therefore you have the arrow pointing upward, which means that you are trying to ascend. So it's a verticalist kind, it's a vertical pathway that they follow, right? And then we have the horizontalist path. So the verticalist path is kind of cessation or stopping of certain activities, right? You stop hanging out with certain friends because you feel that, okay, they're not really productive to you, or you will stop certain lifestyles, you will quit your job, and then basically create a space for yourself where you can meditate. The horizontalist pathway, which is mentioned again in the Hindu tradition, is the system of ashramas, right? Where you're engaging everything, but at a specific point in your life, you will now reach a point where you will take what is called sannyasa, or you would reach a point of, when you will start meditating. So the journey begins, you're not giving up anything per se. So the journey will begin at, as a student, as someone who receives a mantra, Upanayanam, and then later on you would be a grahastha, you would get married, you would participate in household duties, household responsibilities, and then you would become a vanaprastha. That is, you would decide to give up your family, and sometimes you would do it with your spouse. You would go to the forest and dwell in the forest. And the final stage is the stage of what is called sannyasa. So it's quite different from the verticalists. The verticalists will do it sort of abruptly, because they'll say, okay, this is the time, and I'm just going to give up everything, boom. And then, you see them pack up their stuff and, take off. The horizontalists, on the other hand, they engage life. They will do it rather slowly. And there is a time and there is a place when they will specifically engage in spirituality. And then finally, what Feuerstein will say is we have the tantric path, which is an integrative path. So it integrates everything. It'll say there is no need for you to get rid of, your beautiful partner, your beautiful wife who cooks, but sometimes, she may be complaining about a few things, or your pets, or there's no need for you to give up all of those things. You just have to integrate all of that. So what Tantra does is it basically divinizes everything in real time. So you don't have to wait for a later time, as you would do in in the ones who are following the horizontalist kind of pathway, and then they're slowly sort of engaging things. but it will not follow that procedure. It'll just integrate all of life, all of reality, your cooking, your cleaning, your dancing, your studies, everything that it divinizes everything and makes it sacred. The dictum that Tantra follows, and this is what Dr. Rita Sharma, who's the director of the Center for Dharma Studies in Berkeley, California, she says the dictum or the motto of or something that Tantrikas deeply believe in is that everything in the universe is pure, and that to the pure, all things are pure, which means that now what exists can be engaged in without any hesitation. You can now basically engage in everything with joy, and you can now engage in singing, in dancing, without looking at it as something that has to be given up. So you see, the thing about Tantra is that it says you don't have to give up anything. You have to just divinize it. That is what Tantra will say. So other schools, like the verticalist school, will say, okay, well, we have to have these harsh practices, these super harsh practices, and do what is called tapasya. Tapasya is, ascetic practices where you might be twisting your body, or, you might be performing certain rituals in a way that your body now gets tame. But what Tantra will say is there's no need to do all those harsh practices. And the only thing that you need to do is basically follow the practices that you have been prescribed by the tradition. And you need to just learn that all things come from the divine and that they can be integrated. So when you look at Tantra, Tantra is a holistic model. Tantra integrates all of life. So in that sense, it's very much similar to the Bhagavad Gita, because in the Bhagavad Gita, you don't really have to give up your duties. You can perform your duty and also be liberated at the same time. Okay, so Tantra can be divided in many ways. Hindu Tantra, we talk about Hindu Tantric texts. And like I said, that there are Buddhist Tantric texts, and there's Buddhist Tantra, there's Jain Tantra, and they all have different ways of understanding the universe. But we're looking specifically at Hindu Tantra. And Hindu Tantra can be divided as per the practice, or it can be divided in terms of its philosophy. So in terms of practice, and you may have heard this, I'm not sure if you have, but left-handed Tantra and right-handed Tantra. And left-handed Tantra basically is considered antinomian practice. Antinomian means you're going against the norm. So you're going against the values of society. That's why it's antinomian. So left-handed Tantra, and because the left is generally considered inauspicious, so left-handed Tantra would indulge in or would practice and would offer specific items to their deities, and these are called the 5 M's. And because it has to do with the Sanskrit, as Matsya, Madira, Mamsa, and Maithuna, and parched grains. So that's fish, meat, alcohol, grains, and ritual sex, right? So that is the practice that left-handed tantric adepts or devotees would do. And then you have right-handed tantra. So right-handed tantra is basically, they will not offer any of these substances that you're looking at, because for whatever reason, they would just offer what is called pure substances. And these pure substances would be, flowers, regular grain, not parched grain. They would definitely not offer alcohol or meat, and there will definitely not be ritual sex. So that's one way of dividing Tantra. That is, this system that goes against the grain or goes against what society is prescribing. That is, you can't offer alcohol to a deity. No way. You can't offer fish. No way. And then on the other hand, you have another set of practices which will follow sort of what has been prescribed throughout the centuries or in the Vedas, right? That is offering so-called pure substances. So that's one way of dividing. But I must say that this is a false dichotomy. And what it means is that false dichotomy means that the right practitioners also have some of the practices of the left, and the left practices, the left practitioners also have some of the practices of the right. And if you don't get this, that's okay. Just remember this basic thing, that there's a way of worshiping a deity in which you offer all of these substances that we have on the slide right now. And then there's another way of worshiping the deity, which will say, no, we don't need any of these substances. We can just go without it. Now, that's one way of dividing Tantra. The second way of dividing Tantra is by its philosophy. What do they believe in, or how do they understand reality? So one is the dualistic school, in which they will say, okay, well, you have a deity over here, and this is the universe. I don't know if you can see me. I hope you can. But so it's dualistic, right? There's the universe, and then there's the deity, and the deity exists outside the universe, so not quite. And this is slightly more deeper. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But it's a dualistic way of understanding. And then there's a non-dualistic way in which all things are the deity. All things are the god or the goddess or whoever it is who's the highest, whether it is Shiva or Vishnu or the goddess Kali or whoever it is, right? She is in all things. So these are the two ways. One is to divide it by practice, left-handed practice, right-handed practice, or those who believe in this dualistic school of thought or non-dualistic school of thought. And okay, and then we already spoke about this, that it's, am I going backwards? Okay. So we're specifically looking at Shakta Tantra. And the Shakta Tantra, actually, these Shakta Tantric texts come out of the Shaiva texts. And in some of these Shaiva texts, you will find that the goddess is the most supreme. And so there are about 10 texts that are dedicated to Shiva, then another 18 that are dedicated to Rudra, which is another form, a fiercer form of Shiva. And then there's Bhairava, about 64 texts that are dedicated to Bhairava. And those are further divided. And then you have the Shakta texts, those who are dedicated to the goddess. And the goddess can be of various forms. So far, I have spoken to you about what is Tantra. And Tantra basically means weaving. And it's a way, it's a system of practices that allows you to experience your own interwovenness with the universe. That's the first thing that I said. And then I gave you a little bit of history about Tantra, left-handed practitioners, right-handed practitioners, and also a little bit about the philosophy. And now we will look at the specific text, which actually comes from the Puranas. Puranas are myths. However, these are called Tantric, this text is specifically called a Tantric text. And scholars will use term like soft Tantra, like hardcore and softcore. So this is called softcore. And I think as a practitioner, I don't think it's applicable, but anyway, I'll leave my critique aside. So this text is called the Devi Mahatmya, and it's central for all those who worship the Devi. And we know that during Navratri in India and even abroad, this is the text that is most recited. It is chanted, and it has various styles of being chanted throughout India and throughout the world. There are ashrams where they will have the 9 nights celebrated to the Devi during Navratri. So just a little bit about the Devi Mahatmya. So the Devi Mahatmya is part of the Markandeya Purana, and the Devi Mahatmya has about 13 chapters, and the 13 chapters are basically the revelation of who the goddess is. Who is the goddess and what is her nature? What is her origin? What is her form? And these questions are basically asked by a king and a merchant. So there's a king and there's a merchant, and both of them are sort of in a similar situation because they are, the king is dispossessed, he's suffering because, the people from his own kingdom have turned against him, the political leaders and whatnot. And now he has to leave his own kingdom, but he is a just king. He has done everything right. He's just perfect. And now he's suffering because he's still attached to his kingdom. And he's in pain because the people who he knew, his own loved ones, cheated him. And then you have a merchant. And this merchant is going through a similar situation, that is, his own family members, his wife and his children, have betrayed him. They have taken his property. So these two men find themselves, excuse me, these two men, they find themselves in a forest where they meet a, a sage called Medhas. And Medhas, this sage, is the one who basically recites the Devi Mahatmya and gives them the mysteries of the universe. So the Devi Mahatmya is really interesting because it actually reveals something. So it's much more deeper than just the story that you can tell your children, at bedtime. So in the 13 chapters, you will see that the Devi is slaying all these demons, right? There's Dhumralochana, there's Chandamunda, Raktabija, and all of these demons. I'm calling them demons right now because I would have to go and explain. If I go to the Sanskrit, I'm going to have to explain and probably take another hour. But but each of these demons actually represent greed, anger, lust, everything that we have within us. And the goddess is the one who basically destroys each of these. So how do we know that it is a tantric text? And we know because of its form. So there is a specific form that, and this is what scholars say, there's a specific form that is attached to a tantric text, which is slightly different from texts that come, from the Vedas, for example. So, and the form, so before the narrative begins, there is a recitation that goes, and that recitation will have 6 characteristic elements. So there will be a seer as a sage, a mystic, who has actually was the first person to have seen this mantra or to have seen this revelation. Then there will be a specific meter, a chandas. Remember that Hindu texts are not texts per se, and we don't want to understand it in a Christian sense. They are all sung. So they have a meter, Anushtam, Gayatri, Trishtum, so on and so forth. And they are sung and they are recited. Then there is a deity that is mentioned, a devata. There will be a bija that is mentioned. Then there is energy, there is a Shakti, a phoneme that's mentioned. And then sometimes these texts are also protected. They are protected so that, the ones who have vested interests, who are, maybe they haven't really dealt with their life in a good way and trying to use it, it basically tries to hold the text and to keep it safe and secure from those who are impure. So that is what the form is. So here's what I'm going to do for you to keep you awake at this time of the evening. I'm going to recite what this form is like. So before the narrative begins, and how do we know that it's a tantric text? So you will have, for example, the first chapter of the Durga Saptashati that is being recited. So this is the Pratamodhyaya, and here's the Vinyogaha. Vinyogaha meaning the application. Okay. And if you listen carefully, you will be able to hear words like Rishi, which means seer. You will be able to hear the chandas, as in the meter that it is being sung. In this case, it is the Gayatri Chanda. And then you have Nanda Shakti. Remember, we said that there's energy in the bija. And then, these various other aspects, you'll find it there. Okay, so here we go. Om Prathamachaритрस्य Brahma Rishi Mahakali Devata Gayatri Chandah Nanda Shakti Raktadantika Bijam Agnistatvam Rigveda Swarupam Shri Mahakali Prityarthe Prathamacharisya Jape Vinyogah. So that's the form that's recited. And then you will have something which is called the Dhyanam. So the Dhyanam basically focuses on the deity, and the deity is anthropomorphic, or her or his human characteristics are very important because that is what you would meditate on, and that is what you want to focus on. And that again is a very tantric phenomena. So in the Devi Mahatmya, there are three secrets basically that are revealed. And the secrets are revealed towards the end. That is in the Pradhanikam Rahasyam, Vaikritikam Rahasyam, and the Murti Rahasyam. And these three secrets, the number three is very important. And I have another slide that shares why the number three is important in the Shakta world. So these three secrets have to do with the form of the goddess. And what the first secret reveals is that this entire universe comes from the goddess. It comes from her very being. And so she is the foundation. She's the foundation of the universe. And from her, from that one, ekam, that's the Sanskrit word that is used, from that ekam, everything comes into existence. And before this ekam becomes anek, that is many, this one becomes many, it takes on the form of none, that is shunya. So she becomes pure potentiality, and then she takes the form of many. So there's one, and that one kind of transmutates and then becomes many. And that one becomes cosmological, the birds, the bees, the falling rain, everything that you can think and imagine, everything that you can touch, the lions, tiger, fish, snake, water, she becomes everything, right? So that's basically a tantric conception of the universe. Okay, so now I want to get to the three principles. And the first principle that is revealed in the Devi Mahatmya, and these are like esoteric principles, you kind of understand them as you go deeper into practice. So the first principle is that the universe and everything that is created is dynamic. Dynamic means, when people say, oh, this person has a dynamic personality, because they're just so charismatic, they speak beautifully, they are very active, they are present to reality. So this universe actually is dynamic, which means that it is constantly in motion. It moves, and it is also not permanent, right? It's a form, but it moves and it will change shape, and this will happen continuously. So it's a continuous cycle. So in this image that you see, you will see that Shiva is lying down underneath the goddess Kali, and the goddess Kali's foot is on Shiva, and it's her right foot, which basically represents the right-handed tantra. And you'll find all kind of accoutrements. She has, the Khargam Chakra Gadeshu, that's as per the Devi Mahatmya. All of these weapons in her hands, and she has a specific number of arms and specific numbers of feet. And those arms actually represent that she is omnipotent, that she is extremely powerful. She can do anything and everything. Her feet represent that she is in all the directions, right? That she is everywhere, in all the 10 directions. And who she's standing on actually represents, this passive dimension of reality. So you have the passive dimension, and she is the active dimension. And what Tantra will say that Shiva is Shava without Shakti, which means that without energy, without her power, Shiva is nothing. He is powerless. So she is the one who animates him. She is the one who gives him the power. So the first principle is that everything that we're looking at in the universe, from flowers, bees, trees, to our very being, right, inside of us, everything that's happening is in movement. And even if you think, okay, I'm going to be extremely passive today, I will not do any work, I'm not going to cook. But even then, there's stuff going on inside our body. They say that within a minute, the blood in our body actually travels through our heart. Within 1 minute, all the blood in our body will pass through our heart. So that is how much motion there is in the universe. So the first principle says this principle of dynamic motion is that this world has a vibration, it's vibrating, it's pulsating, and there's energy everywhere, right? That is the first principle. And that energy is called Shakti. So Shakti basically means strength, energy, power, the ability to do something, the ability to even think, even that is energy. And so Shakti is the divine force, the energy, the potency. Potency means it has the potential to bring to reality. So when you think something, right, our thoughts has the potential to bring something into reality. So Shakti is this force, this energy, this potency, this innate dynamism that is the cause, because that's how the universe comes into existence, and is also the support of the universe. So everything comes into existence through her, and everything remains in existence through her. So this is something that we have to remember. This is not something that happened, I don't know, thousands of years back, and that's it. You don't want to look at it as beginning and ending. That's not how it is. It happens continuously. So it's happening in real time. Even as we speak, there are cells within our body that are being created, that are being completely dissolved, right? So all of this is part of Shakti, that is inner dynamism. And so remember the Shiva and Shakti picture that we had earlier on. And here we have the Ardhanarishwara, that is, a half feminine god, translated in English. And they represent specific aspects of reality, but don't worry about the words over here. They are slightly more technical, and there's all this jargon over here, so don't worry about it. Basically, what it means is that everything that we can see, we can touch, we can feel is a form of the goddess or the deity, but that form is not all. There's much more beyond that. So there's much more that we can reach out to. And what you will see here is a yantra. So remember I said that the number 3 is of incredible importance to Shaktas. And the triangle, actually, the triangle that goes upwards, first of all, it's a triangle. It's called trikona in Sanskrit and even in Hindi, right? So the triangle that's going upwards basically means the divine being that exists beyond the world, that transcends us, that goes beyond anything that we can think, much, much bigger, much beyond. And then the triangle that's facing downwards is the here and the now, everything that we can touch, that we can feel, that we can sense, the world, matter, reality, all of that. And you will see that they're intersecting. So the triangle that's going upwards and the triangle that's going downwards right here, they're intersecting. In the middle is the bindu. The bindu is where reality exists. That's the matrix of reality. This is where you and I and all of us are. So it is between these two worlds, but these worlds are sort of interwoven, right? So just to think about that word Tantra again, it's interwoven. One cannot exist without the other. Shiva cannot exist without Shakti, and Shakti also needs Shiva, right? But they're kind of interwoven. They're almost entangled, like a knot. So, but it's represented in art and iconography like this. So the second principle, I want to get to the second principle. And the second principle is about contradictions. So there are contradictions in the universe, and the contradictions are between good and evil, between joy and suffering, knowledge and ignorance, and all of this, in Sanskrit, there are the words, and also in Hindi, so you would recognize them. Pavitra, apavitra, Shuddha, Ashuddha. All of this is present in the universe, and there are contradictions in the universe. However, what Tantra will do is it'll offer you a pathway to transcend that by using purity, by being pure, because that's your goal, to be pure. And then when you are pure, you also attain power. So Tantrikas do not, that's the third principle, right? Purity and power. So Tantrikas and, they will channel the energy. Remember, we said the first principle is energy, power. They will channel the energy that exists in the universe, in trees, in material objects. They will channel and use all that energy to generate power, and that power is then used to heal people. It is used for the better of the world, so on and so forth. So that is the third principle. And generally, you will find that there are some schools of thought. I won't go into great detail, but there are some schools of thought who say, no, whatever happens, I'll go with it. But for those who practice Tantra, power is of incredible importance because you can't be powerless. You want to get things done. You want to improve the environment. You want to improve the world. You want to make it a better place. So that is why you would use power. So power is not dismissed. It is not downplayed. It is considered a powerful aspect. So that is the third principle. So the first principle, just a quick recap, the first principle has to do with dynamism, movement, energy, power, Shakti. The second principle that we spoke about is there are contradictions, Shuddha, Ashuddha, joy, suffering, all of that. The third principle is purity and power. And finally, we have reached the end. And the end is application. How will you apply? So you may not be a practitioner, but how can you basically apply this to your day-to-day life? And I would say that first you want to figure out what kind of personality you have. Are you a heart person that mainly functions or mainly resonates with with the emotions and tends to use the emotions? And emotions are not looked at negatively in Tantra. They are very powerful. Or are you a person of the mind who tends to read a lot, tends to use the intellect? Or are you a person of the body? So you want to figure out what kind of personality you have. Once you figure out what kind of personality you have, whether you like to listen to music, whether you like to go out in the world and help people, or whether you like to read or engage the mind, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to then create an intention. And the intention will be whatever the intention is. Remember that in the tantric world, everything is integrated, everything is divinized, everything is beautiful, and it can become a prayer for you. So there is a verse in the Chandi which says Papam Harinim Devim Bhukti Mukti Pradayinim, which means this is the goddess who basically takes away sin. I'm saying sin right now. And she gives bhukti, which means joy, the ability to enjoy things, and also mukti, liberation. So both life and liberation are held together, and you can enjoy both. So what you can do is figure out first who you are, create an intention, offer that intention before the act. Say, for example, you're working on cooking this wonderful meal, or you're working on a project at work. So you can offer that up as an intention, and then focus deeply with one pointed focus on that specific activity. And when you focus deeply on that activity will become your prayer. And you want to not get distracted. You just want to offer that up, and that becomes your prayer. So it's kind of like riding a bicycle. That's why I have this guy up here. So it's a skill that you acquire. How do I focus on this? My mind gets distracted all the time. You can do whatever it needs in order to stay focused, whatever your body is asking you to do. So with that, I would like to say thank you. And I'm not sure if we have time for Q&A, or I'm not sure what the thing is, but thank you for listening.
It was wonderful and a lot of information.
Wow. It was awesome, Dr. Pravina. And I want to just ask that you said about the birds and the bees and the trees, and as if there's an integrated way of living, right? If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
So is it very similar to, let's say, kind of, let's say, what we have, kind of like to be a shaman?
Yeah, there is it is kind of like that, because it is a very shamanistic in the sense that you divinize your body to such an extent that you can now relate to the physical universe. You can relate to the grass and the birds and the bees, and definitely also to people, to animals. But there is a tendency for us to think that there's just me here and there's the world. but this will bring you to such a state that you can sort of understand reality, and then you will enjoy. So the body is not looked at negatively. The body is this extremely positive thing. And once you practice Tantra, then you start sort of enjoying. It becomes a place of revelation where you start seeing the universe, where you start seeing reality joyfully, and you transcend suffering. So even though there may be pain, and but you sort of, there's a different kind of reality that gets unveiled, if you will, and you start seeing other realities as well. So
So
yeah.
simply put, the world becomes like a kind of a playground.
Yeah.
And you are playing with everything that is there in this universe. And because you're playing with things, you don't have to get attached to the object, because very soon you'll have another object with which you can play. So I can understand it like that, like Osho said these things. So, I mean, Tantra is basically where you become part of everything and everything becomes part of you.
Yeah, totally.
Fair enough?
Totally. You become like a mirror, almost like a mirror where everything, you can then reflect everything that's
Right.
outside in the world. And
Very interesting. Very, very interesting it was. And you presented it so easily and beautifully to understand. I could relate to all that you were saying.
oh, wonderful. Thank you. I was
Very
hoping it's not
nice.
too technical, and it's
Oh,
8 p.m.
okay.
So I was
Any
thinking
questions?
about
Questions, friends? I mean, I could understand it very easily, I guess, because I mean, the word tantra, most people don't understand the word tantra. And especially when you showed the slide of the matsya and the alcohol and all that, that can be served to the deity. So I think people have a very limited view.
Yeah.
They feel, oh, ये सब तो बहुत ही बुरी चीज है. But I
Yeah.
think you explained it very well, very, very well. So, is there a different practice for people who will serve alcohol and fish and flesh and all that? Like they have a different practice, right?
Yeah, the rituals will be slightly different, but
Ah,
every ritual is not just you're taking alcohol and you're offering it to the deity. It
ah,
goes with specific mantras. So there
ah.
are mantras that are chanted, offered before you offer the food. There are specific gestures also that you are using when you're feeding the deity. So pranaya swaha, apanaya swaha. So there are specific gestures also that you're using, and all of these sort of help you to sort of understand and also become the deity. So it's not a very Christian sense where in the Bible, and I'm a comparative theologian, so I'll just digress just for 1 second.
Yeah.
So in the Bible, there in Genesis, there's this thing where humans are made in the image and likeness of God. So they are like God. They become like God, like in his likeness. But in Tantra, you don't become like God. You become God. You
Ah,
become the deity himself, herself. You become her. You become her eyes. So there is the in the Chandi, there's that verse, no, Rupam Dehi Janam Dehi. So you become her eyes. You become her perfect existence in the world. And now, as her, then you are dealing, or as you said very beautifully, playing with the universe, because there's like this Leela, where you're enjoying. She's letting you enjoy the universe, and you let her enjoy the universe through your body, actually.
so is it similar to, let's say, a child in the womb of a mother?
Oh yes, totally. So it's that's really great, because I write about this in my book, which you actually introduced in the beginning. I say that like a child is in her mother's womb, so we are constantly never disconnected from the goddess. So, the child receives all her nourishment from the mother. The child receives the blood of the mother. The child receives her protection from the mother. So it's all coming from the mother. So you're never disconnected. So we think that, oh, I need to be woven into the universe. Actually, it's just a way for you to experience that interwovenness. So that's what it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you've
I,
changed my perception, though I don't know much about Tantra, but
yeah.
whatever you were saying, completely resonated with the work that we do in actually past life therapy, where
Yeah.
you are dissociated from your past life experience. At the same time, you're attached to the past life experience. So it's like you are you as you know yourself, but you're also these various other selves
Yeah.
that you experience during the session. And at
Right.
one point, you understand that there is no death and there is nothing but oneness.
Yes.
The kind of what you were just saying, the ekam,
Yeah.
the sense of being one. I
Yeah.
think that's exactly what past life is all about. And the whole philosophy of, let's say, Advaita is also very similar to Tantra. Am I right?
Yes. It's similar in the non-dual schools.
Hmm.
So the non-dual schools is Advaita, so it's all
Correct.
her. So
Yes.
it's the goddess. And in the Devi Mahatmya chapter 10, verse 5, she actually says, when she's killing one of the demons, she says, there's only me who exists.
Correct.
Uh, and the Sanskrit is very interesting because it says, Ekai Vaham Jagatyatra. So Ekai means there's only one thing. Ek, there's only me. You think there's this, there's that, there is the neighbor, that nagging neighbor, that stupid person, this animal, these people who are not listening to me, they don't want to get spiritual, they don't want to talk about this, but there's only her in different forms.
Correct.
That's
That's exactly what we say in our past life work. So it's very, very, I mean, whatever you were saying was so much kind of resonating with the
yeah.
work that we do. Yes, whether he want to ask a question, Beta, or you want to give a
Yeah,
comment?
I wanted to ask a question. Very, very surprising. Yesterday, I bought this Devi Mahatmya book from a bookshop.
Yeah.
Very surprising. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I was just going through it and I said, oh my God, how am I going to even start this? Does anyone have to initiate for this or, all those, I don't know, they're doing nyasas and all those things, which I don't understand. So how do I
um
want to go about it? And also, like, as you said, this Tantra word is big one for me. But as you said, for me, Shakti exists. That's it. That Shakti is me. That much I have experienced.
Yeah, so thank you, Vaidehi, and thank you also for your patience. Yeah, so the thing is, first, I just want to make a brief comment because in India, there is a tendency to look at Tantra very negatively and in a very pejorative kind of way, like, oh, this thing. And Hindus think that, oh, Tantra, no way, we want nothing to do with it. But actually, what they do not know is that Tantra has influenced all of Hinduism. So this entire system of chakras comes from Tantra.
Correct.
Art and architecture comes from Tantra. So, for example, how will you build a temple? That comes from the Tantra Shastra. How will you do Murti Puja? That comes from Tantra. How will you do Prana Pratishtha, which means how will you establish the deity on her or his throne? That comes from Tantra. Art and aesthetics, Bharatanatyam, all of that stuff comes from Tantra. So unfortunately, what has happened is that most Hindus, when they hear that word, they only think of black magic, but it's not that, it's much beyond that. Now, the second part of your question is that you got a Devi Mahatmya yesterday.
Yes.
I would suggest just listening to to the chants and learning to chant it. There are also translations that you can find online. The translation that I use is from Swami Satyananda Saraswati. I've also used that in my book, actually. Swami Satyananda Saraswati has an English translation.
This is from Bihar School of Yoga, right?
No, he's from Yuba City, in California. So there's a Devi Mandir over there. And he's a white sannyasi who came to India in the 70s or 80s, I'm forgetting. And he has a beautiful mandir in California and a lot of practitioners. And so I use that translation for my work. But for chanting, you have Bhaskar. You can write this down. Or you can watch the video again. I think they will post the video.
Yeah.
But there's Bhaskar Prakash Ashram, where they have on YouTube a wonderful, beautiful, online chanting that you can just listen to, because it says in the Devi Mahatmya, even if you're not able to chant, if you just listen also, it has energy. See, the thing is that these are mantras. They are hidden within the mantra is energy. Remember, we spoke about energy. And hidden within these mantras, in the way they are recited, in the way they are chanted, is a specific form of Shakti. So even when you just listen to it or play it, and if you do it with perfect devotion, with in a specific way, you're not getting distracted, it will have more benefits. So there's something called Phalashruti. Phalashruti means there will be a fruit to that. And I don't know how well you are with Sanskrit, but it's, I mean, to me, I realize that sometimes I tend to think, we always think of others here. Anyway, so I think that it's easy to chant, but I don't know, I could be wrong. So if you can actually learn the chants and read, and then what happens is you will receive the grace, whatever grace that you need in order to proceed. Regarding initiation, if you really are deeply interested, you can just ask the mother to lead you, and you will find someone to initiate you. But to chant and to listen, you really don't need any kind of initiation. If you're interested in moving forward, then I would say that it is good to receive some kind of initiation, because what happens is when you receive a mantra from your guru or guru ma, in my case it's guru ma, what happens is that mantra has lots of Shakti. So my guru ma is just incredible. I mean, she so when I received Diksha, there was stuff that happened for months, and almost like it just kept on happening, and I'm not allowed to share much about the things that happen, but like mystical stuff. So when you receive a guru, what happens is, and a legitimate guru, you want to figure out who they are, and stay with them for some time, see that they are legitimate, see that they are genuine, and then you can ask for Diksha, and that will give you great power and insight.
Okay, thank you. Because it is surprising. Why I got it, I don't know. I just picked it up. That's all. So maybe there's guidance will come through for me.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes the universe does amazing things, and you don't know.
Yeah.
Once you sort of learn how it's talking, so sometimes the universe talks in numbers, in signs,
True.
with images, with colors, and all these things that I've mentioned, materiality. This is all part of Tantra. So Tantra will say what to wear when you're practicing a specific ritual, what color you should wear, which direction you would sit in, what is the mantra that you would chant, what is the animal hide, for example. If you are a left-handed practitioner, what is the animal hide that you would sit on? Why? Because everything has energy. Now, how would you channel that energy? So the 3-part method that I gave you is basically to create intentionality and to do it on purpose. And if you really genuinely desire to get close to the universe, I tell you, the universe speaks in beautiful ways, and you would be surprised. You would just think something, and there's this verse, yam yam chintayate kamam tam tam prapnoti nishchitam, which means the Sanskrit, when you think yam yam chintayate kamam, whatever kamam you think, it will start happening.
Yeah.
So you just have to be pure, and you have to desire to work for the good of the universe.
Thank you so much. That helps.
Yes, you're welcome.
And one more thing I would like to add is, now I got the clarity, like here in Amer, near Jaipur, in Amer, there is a Kali Mata Mandir, and they offer this alcohol. So I used to think, why is it so? Why Mata ko ye sab chadhate? But now I got the clarity. This
Yeah,
is a sort of ritual.
yeah, she accepts all things. She is the least fussy. People who are fussy, they'll be like, no, I don't want this, I don't want that. She's like, bring whatever you can, and she will happily accept it. This is how I see Kali Ma.
जैसे व्यक्ति की श्रद्धा,
हाँ,
वैसे
बिल्कुल।
माँ जो है वो सब कुछ ले लेती है. So
हाँ,
even a
because
naughty
Shakta is
child
most
is
important.
accepted a child who's having dysfunction is also accepted. So I think that's so beautiful. I
Yeah,
think
you know what I do is sometimes even my thoughts that may not be, sometimes, you know, the thoughts which may be very distracting, I even offer my thoughts. I say, you take my thoughts. Today, I have no flowers for you. I actually, when I'm talking to my students, I tell them, you know, my one is happy with anything and everything. Because sometimes I don't even give her flowers. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have flowers for you today. You know what? I'll give you my thoughts. Here, take it. And there's a gesture along with it. I'm like, here, take it. And, you know, even those ones that in which I was most irritable, my angry feelings, take that. That's your, that's my offering for you for today.
That's
Yeah.
very beautiful, Pravina. Very, very nice. I think it was a session that I don't know, but made my mind silent.
That's
Like
wonderful.
the chatter kind of stopped because your words were so pure. Whatever you were saying was so pure that everything is one and there is no kind of separation. And I think that really made my mind very calm. Just to think of what you were saying is really beautiful, Pravina. Very, very nice. I think everybody enjoyed the session. Yes or no? Let's clap for this super session. Everybody put your videos on. Come on, everyone. Let me have everybody's videos on so we can.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was an amazing, amazing session. Amazing session. As Ma said, we were just so silent listening to you all the time because we wanted to get more from you. So there was no point of asking any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mridula.
Very nice. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.